All right. Hi, everyone. Okay, it's visible and audible. Okay. All right. Well, my name is Nivedita Murthy. You can call me Nivi, N-I-V-I. That's the short form of it all. About me, I am an associate principal consultant at Synopsys. I've been in this industry for 13 years now, so it's not like I've just come out of college and talking about the whole AppSec program. I have some experience talking to different organizations, trying to set up their AppSec program, working through it. And now I've been focused on DevSecOps for the past few years, at least. As part of my job, I have to script a lot, which is my favorite part, and to create out-of-box solutions. I've done a couple of speaking engagements over the past few years, and which includes quite a few B-sides in other locations. I'm actually one of the organizers for Boston Security Meetup. So whenever you're in Boston, please do come and check out our meetup. Third Thursday of the month. We try to get some interesting talks. We are now hybrid as well. So if you are here and you want to give a presentation in Boston, feel free to do so. And finally, a proud dog mom. This is the first time my dog has come over here, has been on a plane, so he's enjoying it out here. But let's dive into the talk now. So what do we have on our agenda today? We first start with the inventory itself, application inventory to be precise. If we are to start an application security program, you need to know what you are protecting. You can't just go in blind and start something out there. Another important aspect for any program is metrics. You probably heard this several times. Security is a cost center. An organization does not make any money through security. It can intangibly prevent losses. So how does security show return of investment while waiting for that once in a while security attack to happen? Next is technology, the tools that help us get this done, the tool that actually helps run an AppSec program. And then there is governance, policies and standards that give teeth to this program and that can establish that this has leadership approval. And then at last we talk about quick wins. We are in 2022 and just about everyone here has short attention span, including me. I mean, I can say I have a short attention span. It is the age of instant gratification. To convince your sponsors, or rather your leadership, your program needs some quick wins. So what is an application inventory? In simple terms, it's a data set of all the applications that the organization uses. Now, if you need to start your AppSec program, you need to know what you are protecting. What applications does your organization develop? What applications do you buy from others? Where are they hosted? What does it handle out there? What data does it handle? An application inventory helps you determine easily in case of security notifications, that in case of who could be potentially impacted. And application inventory helps tie back the responsibility of security vulnerabilities to the right team, and then the application leader itself. An inventory helps security team plan and organize AppSec initiatives. If you had to find all the applications being hosted on a server that is vulnerable, you can use the inventory for the same. Sorry. And then you can use the same thing to figure out who to be contacted ASAP. You didn't have to go through, dig through, and check out do you know who owns this application? Do you know who owns this server? Do you know who owns this particular section or network? Run a network scan and find out the IP address associated. Who raised the ticket associated to this IP address? You don't have to do that. An inventory gives you direct access to all of that contact information. If you're a large organization, an application inventory also helps segregate the risk by division or the verticals that you have in your organization. So what data should you expect in an application inventory? Let's start with the basics. Business criticality, externally facing, data confidentiality and technical and business contacts, RTOs, DR procedures, etc. And then number of users, whether it's developed internally or externally. Like, do you have it procured from someone else, or is this something developed internally by your own developers? With this information, one can determine how critical the application is to the organization. Example, an organization would rather run pen tests on externally facing applications only, since pen tests are expensive, and externally facing applications are at a higher risk compared to your internal ones. Excessive vulnerabilities have a higher impact on externally facing applications versus internal applications. Application metadata can be used to determine the actual severity of an application versus, like, instead of the one determined by a scanning tool. So you can start the inventory with the basic level of metadata out here. Then you can also enable it to trigger processes that are part of an app onboarding process. A mature application inventory and process and database can also notify when an application is due for audits, such as BCP and DR checks, and even security scans. You can actually set this up. Quite a few organizations have already this in their inventory out there. In the latest trends, organizations are also trying to include a BOM, or bill of materials. Just a show of hands, how many of you have heard of this term BOM, or BOM, or bill of materials? So you know what it is a little bit, you could say. We've been hearing about this through Log4j attacks, in case if you have heard. But essentially, you can also include this as part of your inventory, so you have a much better accurate view of what the organization actually controls or has in its network out there. What is it storing out there? Does that mean this is a one-time activity? Once all the data is captured, should it be left out like that? Like any other data, it becomes stale over time. And people come and go. Applications also change. They change state, they change activity. Some applications just get decommissioned, and it takes time. How many of you have heard this term? Oh, the application is actually getting decommissioned, and you've heard this thing happening for 5 years at least. I've heard it for 5 years. And as such, there needs to be a process to audit all of this information and ensure the data in the inventory is accurate so that your processes don't get stopped out there. A typical way to do this is to trigger a review every 1 or 2 years. And some organizations have done it based on criticality. So if it's a critical application, they review it every year. If it's maybe a medium application, then every 3 years, and so on and so forth. So what tools would you use to set this up? If you are at the beginner level, I would just say go with a simple Excel sheet. Honestly, the best way to start it out is an Excel, because it's under your control. You don't have to pay for it. It's already installed, and you have it ready. If you go and try and buy a tool, you have to go through procurement. You have to go through legal. You have to go through leadership to get the buy-in for that. So start off with an Excel if you have to. And then host it on some, on a storage service, or like a SharePoint Excel maybe, so others can contribute to it. Make it available to others so that you can keep a track. And it's just not one person maintaining that Excel. You have quite a few teams maintaining that Excel at the same time. While it's tedious and manual work, you can at least start it off. And more importantly, you have a good view of your application portfolio. You have something in hand ready. In terms of actual tools, there is ServiceNow, Compass, Remedy, and Freshservice that I've heard from my own interactions with different organizations. But there are quite a few tools in the market. Choose wisely what works for you. So after all of what I've said here, let's have an opinion poll. We have quite a few people out here. Do you think a product company with just a few products in their portfolio needs an inventory? Let's say yes. Okay, yes. Quite a few good hands. Okay. Can one of you just let me know why? And what do you consider few products? Yeah, go ahead. Right. But I have an example of a company which had just 2 products. Does this company need an inventory? Yes. Okay. Why? Yeah. Good. That's great. So that's why we need an inventory, because even if it's one product, it's not exactly one small product. It's end-to-end services being provided through that single product out there. And when it comes to development, you are going through several endpoints to finally deliver that product, finally deliver a functionality of that product. So yes, you still need an inventory. All right. Next topic, what is metric? Actually, if you wanted to try it out, if you run a Google search right now, at least this worked for me, for the word metric, just the word metric, the first result that actually pops up is a Canadian rock band. It is not the meaning, it's not the definition of metric. It is actually a Canadian rock band which was there. But to more serious conversations out here, it is essentially a system of measurement in terms of business. It's an intangible way of showing results. What would you consider a good security metric? Let's discuss the obvious ones. Anything that talks about vulnerability summaries, it's a metric. Note that you should also be ready with a conclusion or implications of a metric. Examples of metrics include total number of vulnerabilities by severity, or new vulnerabilities found every month by severity. The same numbers can be filtered down to an organization level or to a division level or subdivision level. Then your next point here should be, what is the pain point that we are trying to highlight here with this metric, okay? Or what successes are we trying to showcase out here with this? With vulnerabilities by severity, you are trying to point out the risk level of an organization. But then you could also be then, if a majority of the vulnerabilities are of medium severity, then does that mean the organization is doing slightly better than, let's say, other organizations out there in the, in your industry? Or by basically not having so many higher critical vulnerabilities? Or could it be that because of your team's bandwidth, you're only focusing on critical and high vulnerabilities? You're actually just triaging critical and high vulnerabilities. You're not even looking at medium vulnerabilities. That way, you have actually reduced the actual true positives. I mean, these are true positive numbers. You never looked at medium. And there could be the case that those medium numbers that you see are actually false positives out there. That could also be the case, because these numbers are coming from scanning tools. And we all know when you run automated scanning tools, they have false positives. So it's not necessary that this number accurately reflects unless and until you go into the details on how are the metrics captured. Another example of a metric and trying to explain the context behind it is think about scan times. Okay? When we talk about scan times, we talk about average scan times out there as a metric. But would it be fair to club scan times for, let's say, all apps under one average? When you say, think about apps which are like 500K LOC. When I say LOC, it's line of code versus microservices which are really small. When you run any sort of security scan on it, the microservice will obviously be done within few minutes, not even few minutes, I would say under a minute at times. But with a big app like this one, which I was referring to, 500K, it may take some time. Try to average out something which takes, 10 to 15 minutes versus 1 minute. What is the average that you'll get? Are we saying there that the average is actually 5 to 6 minutes to run a scan? It's not fair to club these applications together. Sometimes it could probably take a little bit higher, and then trying to average them out doesn't help out here. So again, presenting the data correctly is actually important, and this actually helps understand the context behind what you're trying to showcase out here. As you can figure out with examples, we discussed contextualization is very important. Far too many achievements are actually lost in translation when you showcase this with the help of metrics sometimes. Presenting the information correctly is as important as getting the information as well. Using a pie chart instead of a bar diagram, or using the right colors while presenting the right information, or presenting good or bad outcomes is important. These are all important tools that you need to learn, you need to pick up while presenting metrics to leadership. Deciding when an overall summary is better over granular data, or ultimately metrics carry your story. They are the story of how you have been working to secure your organization. I can share a lot more, but I've spoken in depth about this topic at B-Sides Nova, the vulnerability deluge, how to dig in. So you can just Google it out if you have to. But at the same time, our next talk in this room actually is being given on metrics by Christine. She's over here. So if you still want to learn about metrics, stay over here. Another critical factor for metrics is accuracy. Efforts should be made to get the most accurate information while presenting metrics. Accuracy can only be possible if you collect the data regularly and in the correct manner as well. Most teams don't face these challenges in collecting data. It is only how frequently you can get, that's where teams falter out there. If it was collected manually, you don't want to do this daily. But if it was being collected automatically, you can obviously pull the data regularly, like almost on an hourly basis if required. Next thing is distribution itself. What is the benefit of sending a weekly report when you cannot show your success on a weekly basis, but the same success can be shown on a monthly basis? So think about that. Does your vulnerability count actually change on a weekly basis? I don't think so, unless you are sending one code to production on a weekly basis. On an average, teams have a 15-day life cycle where they have code changes generally going either every 15 days or every month over here. It would make much more sense to distribute your reports monthly, on a monthly basis or maybe quarterly basis, to actually show that you have made improvement compared to the last report that we had. That's how you show improvement over here. So how do metrics deliver? We spoke a lot about metrics and how to show it, but who's actually watching this? Your leadership. The same leadership who asks you, why should they invest in your security program? Why should they at least keep you giving the same budget, if not more? Okay, so that's how metrics help you out. Metrics actually shows them that security team is not a liability. The work the team is doing is actually helping secure the organization. It helps shows the intangible ways the organization is saving on security incidents by actually preventing them. It also highlights the progress made by security teams to improve the overall risk the organization currently has. And if you push your developers to undergo secure code training on a regular basis, then you should show the results over here in your metrics itself that this investment helped reduce the number of vulnerabilities over time in the organization itself. Next one is technology. One of the main pillars for setting up an AppSec program is technology itself. This is where most of your money goes. As a greenfield client, and at least from a consulting perspective, when you say greenfield, it's like someone who does not have any AppSec program or has maybe a little bit of it. They don't have a full-blown AppSec program over there. In my opinion, you should just start with open source tools. Okay, there are several open source tools out there in the market. In general, people offer that so that you can at least understand how things work. That is important. Before you go and jump in and start buying tools from the market, you need to know what are you buying, what decisions should you make when running a POC, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. If you haven't heard of OWASP by now, that is Open Web Application Security Program. It's basically a non-profit that has helped a lot in AppSec sector. They have provided tools, trainings, and the whole assessment methodology over there. And it's one of the driving forces at AppSec. The logos that you actually see right now is just a sample of all the tools in the market. It is not the whole thing. It's not the whole picture out there. And then just start with a basic scan. Run a SAS scan. When I say a SAS scan or a static application security testing tool, it helps identify vulnerabilities in your application, in the code itself that you have developed. There are some decent open source tools in the market. For example, Spotworks over there is very good for Java. Then you have Brakeman for Ruby on Rails. There are some, then Secure Go for Golang, etc. Get a sense on how these tools work and how the results come out. Get feedback from your developers. In the previous session that we had over here, they said he hates you. And they hate security team. How many times have you heard like security team is being a big pain out here? Try and collaborate with them. Try and get feedback with them on how these tools are affecting them and what would they like. Try and gain their confidence in working with your tools out there. You could also run a secret scanner. Does anyone here know what is a secret scanner? The name itself will give you an indication, but does anyone here know what's a secret scanner? You want to say?
It just scans. So for us, we use it in GitLab. It scans the repositories for like AWS, CPPs, or whatever.
Right. So just search for passwords. How many times have you heard development teams actually storing passwords in the code itself? I have literally seen quite a few times here in production. Passwords, tokens, SSN. All of these, I mean, why is SSN over there? I have no idea, but sometimes people have stored this information in their code repositories. In fact, one of the clients, from what I heard, their source code was public facing, and the passwords for all of their servers was in that code out there. So somebody actually found it out. It was a major issue. Ultimately, you don't want that to happen, even with external. You don't want this to happen. So instead of talking to people about, trying to teach them about XSS, SQL injection, let's go with basics. What is a password? Everyone knows what's a password. Is it a good habit to store passwords in code? No, it's not. So just run a secret scan and figure it out and just try and close that out. Then start introducing, just get into this process of identifying a vulnerability, understanding a vulnerability, and then fixing that vulnerability. Let your developers get used to certain security initiatives. You don't want to go big bang theory on them. You just want to go one step at a time. They're all babies. We need to treat them that way. Then introduce more tools that run different kinds of assessments. Example, SCA, DAST. I'm going to say a lot of acronyms. I'm going to explain you what are those acronyms as well. IAS, RASP, and all. Let's go with SCA. How many of you have heard of Log4j? Everyone. Just about everyone. Okay. So from Log4j, did you hear the term called SCA? If not, it's called source composition analysis. Log4j came into picture because just about every other application has that as their logging capability. It's a free open source library which people can include to start logging whatever the application is doing out there. And an SCA tool or a source composition analysis tool actually identifies if your application has that component or not. It is basically its job to find it out. Then the next job is to, after finding that component, it will tell you what are the publicly known vulnerabilities in there. And guess what? As per the latest report that checks out how people develop, 80% of anyone's code, any application, at least 80% of it is comprised of open source components. So you're actually introducing risk from outside and not by your own developers. So running an SCA scan is actually important for your organization. We then have DAST scans, or dynamic application security testing. DAST is basically running a scan on an endpoint. Give it a URL, run the scan. Give it credentials so it can run authenticated scans out there. Some things cannot be found through SAST or SCA. It can only be found through DAST scans. So try running that. And then IAST, which is a little bit more of an intelligent way of running DAST scans. That's what I would say. It's called interactive application security testing. So when you're actually running a test, or when you're running a regression test out there by a human or by an automated testing tool, IS will actually check it and see if this response is vulnerable or not, if this is actually going to lead to any vulnerabilities out there. So, and the other one is RAS, which works on the server side, similar thing, but it has a capability to actually block any request coming on production if it thinks it's going to be malicious or not. Note that IaaS and RASP, they don't have any open source tool out there, and the market in general hasn't accepted it yet. So because it's very difficult to understand, there's a lot of initial investment to get things running, to make use of these tools, and which is a hindrance for a lot of people. When you start working with infrastructure teams to get things installed, you are going to wait forever, at least for me. Then after you start running these tools, look at the issues. Look at what's your, I would say, what's your confidence level in the tools, and how happy have you been in just using these tools. Sometimes you just hate how to use it. Maybe there's a better tool in the market which makes it simpler. It lets you connect everything. It works pretty well. Like you just have to do click, 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 and it's done. Or it's like, give a few parameters at the command line and it's done. You can run it automatically if you want to. So think in those factors. If you had to scale up, if you had to improve the quality of the issues, look at tools in the market which offer similar capabilities, and then run a POC and then choose one. The other aspect of running assessments is that you don't need to start scanning all of your applications. Choose the applications wisely. You can go in phases. You start with the critical ones which are important. You need to make sure they're secure out there, and then you go down to high severity applications, or rather high criticality applications, medium criticality, and so on and so forth. Just make sure you settle with one tool before moving on to the next section out here. Next is governance. Somewhere in the beginning I wrote, without rules there would be an anarchy. I'm sure some people may disagree out here. I do not want to go into a whole philosophical discussion about this, but coming back to this topic, in order for a security program to be effective, there needs to be some policies and standards set to make sure that teams just don't go and ballistic in terms of developing and throwing things in development. How many of you have seen cases where developers actually have access to push things to production? Have you seen any of these cases? Yes, I've seen a few hands here. I personally saw this happen like just recently. I'm still shocked this happens, yet people give developers access to more code to production. But you need to have some rules. You cannot just allow anyone to go and deploy things in production. Have you heard of segregation of duties? This is a term that's coming up. One person develops, the other person tests, the third person deploys it in production, and a fourth person gives approval for the same after reviewing everything is being done correctly. Similar way, policies need to be established to what is expected in terms of security. Okay? Policies also need to be scoped correctly and aligned to the laws and regulations of the land. Some companies have to comply with, let's say, PCI standards. Some companies have to comply with PHI standards. Policies help to make sure that they're complying to the same. Then typical examples of a policy could include all internet-facing applications have to go through a dash scan or a pen test at least, and they have to be done every year, once a year at least. Or all critical vulnerabilities have to be closed out in, let's say, 60 days. Some teams have actually 7 days, but I'm just giving you, a nice standard out there. 60 days of discovery. And as an organization matures, you can actually go to, reduce that same timeline. Like I said, 7 days. Some teams actually can possibly do that. If they find a critical vulnerability, they just have 7 days to fix that vulnerability, because they have a process in place to go fix it, deploy it quickly, test it out quickly, and move it to production. Review your policies and standards every 2 or 3 years. You cannot keep the same policy that was there for 10 years back. Changes are happening, changes happen every year. You need to keep up with times. The policies and standards also need to keep up with times. And then metrics can be created to check compliance to this policy. You can also set up some automated notifications that tell teams that you're actually going to violate this policy in, let's say, X days, or when they have actually violated this policy, say that you violated this policy, this is the reason, you need to go and check it out here. Okay, this is going to be interesting. How long have you lasted? How long have you lasted before you checked your phone? I'm pretty sure I did during the calls, during the sessions itself, but how long have you lasted? 2 minutes? 4 minutes. Wow. Anyone more than 10 minutes? Wow. Okay, there's someone over there. Wow, but no one. Okay. All right. All right. After literally being thrown, into acquiring a digital life, all of us, like I said, at least I have short attention span. I am at the mercy of my mobile phone. See, all meetings, all Zoom meetings, I have definitely seen in one. It doesn't matter. It's like there's nothing important coming in. There's nothing major coming in. There's no major emergency. I'm not part of the SOC team. I'm not part of the incident response team where I should be getting alerts out there if somebody's going to attack me. No. My biggest notification would probably be a cute dog post coming up. That's it. But yes, we have short attention span. So unless it is something really interesting and that I'm seeing, and I'm seeing good results coming out, I won't stick to that topic, whatever is happening out in front of me, and probably jump on to something else that will give me instant gratification, you could say. Same goes for leadership. They would rather want to see results immediately or quickly, at least, before they invest in the next big thing. Especially when they're already investing in something into heavy, like a security program. Security programs cost a lot for them, and they need to see results. For that, and not just security, just about any program, but more for security because that's not an ROI. It's not a product which will ultimately make millions for them. It is something that's just going to take money. It's not, and maybe make sure that you're fine with it. So that's why our next topic comes in. Quick wins. A quick win is an improvement that is visible, immediate benefit, and can be delivered quickly after the project begins. The quick win does not have to be profound or have a long-term impact to your organization, but it needs to be something that stakeholders agree is a good thing. Examples of quick wins include password protection. Just like we discussed, exclude any passwords or any sensitive information from your code. And this is pretty easy to implement. It's very easy to find. It's very easy to implement. Just have a password vault or a special place where people can just pick up their passwords and connect it to your application. Another example is making sure developers have to go through secure code training. How many of you have gone through mandatory trainings as soon as you have joined an organization? Pretty much it. Those who haven't gone through, you're lucky. Seriously. I've had to go through at least 90 trainings for one organization, which was horrible. But anyways, coming back to the topic, secure code training helps developers understand how to write code securely. As simple as that. It may not be an immediate result, like people will write absolutely amazing code. It won't stop them going to, Stack Overflow and picking up copies of really bad code and including it in their application. But at least it stops them from, straight away pasting it. Like, is this good code? This is not what I was taught. Maybe I have to validate input, something like that. Making them go through this training is a quick win. Why? Because within 90 days, you can actually, proudly say your developers actually are trained in secure code. And then you can also drive out some infrastructure changes in secure config. Not everything has to be tested like for 30 days and then move to production. Some of these changes just require a quick fix and can be moved to, within the 90-day cycle if you had to. So it's possible to, get some insecure configs closed up. And then while you may have been running scans manually at the beginning, automated scans help a lot. Can anyone say what's the benefits of running an automated scan? Yep, go to other things. Short attention span, I can go and switch on to another task. Yep. In short, it actually helps efficiency, drives efficiency, makes your developers happy because you are not taking time. There's no delay as such in terms of running these scans. You can scale up pretty fast. I can give you an example from where I work. It took us, I was able to actually run scans for 700 applications by setting up automated scans over there within a month. 700 applications where I was able to onboard all of them after setting up automated. I'm part of DevSecOps team, so I have to set up these pipelines that run automated scans. Okay, any other improvement, any other example of quick wins? Anyone? Do you know any example of a quick win that could help, say, security team is the best, something like that? All right. Quick wins are a precursor to long-term goals. Did something go? Okay, anyways. Okay. They are the initial set of results that offer you hope and vision into your long-term results out there. It also builds trust for the security team across the organization, especially the leadership team, to know that the security program is running well and it can confidently take on other long-term initiatives if they have to, given the right support. We need that support from leadership out there. And everyone likes success. It shines attention on the team that has actually done it, and everyone wants to be part of the success of that success out there. So the developer community will actually want to be part of the initiatives that you are taking in, because they've seen that you have these wins coming up and like you're getting all that attention out here. Well, that is just a summary of what you can probably do to start an AppSec program. There's a lot more things. I've not covered up infrastructure, anything out here. You may have seen I've not talked about cloud security of anything, because that's a whole big discussion out there. But if you want to talk about it, we can always talk here. This was just a basic intro, but feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And if there are any questions, I will take it out now. Thank you. Can you take one question?
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Good.
As you're in DevOps, have you seen the push towards shifting left? And then how do you engage in that? It seems to me that developers want to test on their own machine and
Yes.
trust that it's happening.
Yes. Shift left, that's a big keyword that's been running across, and people sometimes think, what is it all about? And yes, we have a lot of tools, and you're right, like how do we trust? We don't trust them. Yeah, honestly, I don't trust developers don't trust us. But we do like to offer them tools saying, use this, try and find the basic of basic vulnerabilities out there, the basic stuff. Do not include passwords or validate your inputs. Those tools actually try to find that out as well, and they highlight it for them. And it's actually way more easier to show it them there itself while they're running their code than tell them 3 days later that this is there in your code out there. What we do is, there are very few tools in the market that could actually offer that, and it's supposed to be the right fit. A lot of the plugins that we call it, IDE plugins that actually run scans on your code level while you're typing it, can only work on Eclipse and Visual Studio, and that to some versions. They are not equipped to run on, let's say, Spring Boot or any of the IDEs that developers generally use out there. So the other offer is, as soon as they commit their code, it's very easy to do that. You type, you commit your code. People do a lot of commits. You can trigger scans over there. It's called hooks that we call it, and give you an offer where we check for specific vulnerabilities. We don't check for everything. We just check for specific vulnerabilities and like say this is what it. But it's a slow introduction. You cannot go straight away jump into it like if they have no exposure to any kind of security scan. So if they are already used to finding vulnerabilities, they're used to a tool, after you push it to the master branch or whatever, the release branch, then you start introducing these tools if they have to. Okay. Any other questions?
API security on Warface. How would you introduce API security in an AppSec context?
That's a good question. I would start with simple training, how to write APIs in the first place. Thank you.
Rephrase the question so that it gets caught with it.
Yeah. So the question is, how do you introduce security for people who develop APIs? Did I cover that correctly? Start with basics, how to write an API. What are the good practices? Sometimes people don't know what are the standard development practices while writing an API. Let's say, make sure it limits to certain values. Records are limited. It's not showing the whole database out there when somebody queries. Just simple standard practices. Then there are certain tools that can only do API scans. Not all of the tools out there can do it. Use that. Look at ones which are focused on API scans, and they're not like all the ballpark figure out there. That's how you would probably introduce it. Any other questions? Going once, going twice? All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.